that are going to be drawn. Drawing is, I said from the beginning, John has a lot of code words and symbolisms in John. It's a great book for that. And drawing is something that John's been playing with throughout the book. In John 2, Jesus tells them to draw out some water. But it's not going to actually be water, it's going to be wine. But you have to draw it out. You know, when he changes the water to wine at the wedding banquet, he tells the servants, you draw it out. And you'll see that what you thought was water is now wine. In John 4, the exchange with the woman at the well, it's a beautiful exchange. And at one point she says to him, sir, you have nothing to draw with. So, oh yes I do. I have a water that you don't even know about yet. And at that point she's like, give me the water so I never have to come to this well and draw again. I'm tired of drawing from Jacob's well. I'm downright tired. And I want a water that you're talking about, that I never have to draw again. Once I draw, it's finished, it's over. And I've got living waters coming out of me all the time. John's playing with this drawing thing all the way through his... And I hope you don't take me the wrong way when I say that. It's not a joke for John. But he's a very, very spiritual man writing in very spiritual terms and is trying to get these spiritual truths into us through his book. More so than the synoptic gospels kind of thing. So now we've got this drawing going on with the Father, with the Son, that revolves around his life, that revolves around his death, that will come to fruition at the resurrection. And the cross is absolutely essential to the Father's plan and purpose for the salvation of man, that we would know him. And we didn't read the third thing that we'll close with here this morning. As this thing unfolds, and he's talking about being lifted up, you guys have probably sung choruses. What time is it? 12:30. You guys have probably, just a couple more minutes, you guys have probably sung choruses about, lift him up. We use that a lot. Or, he said, if I be lifted up, I would draw men to me. And we've always used that in the context of kind of like praise, that we lift him up. We praise him and lift him up. And that's, it's not a bad application of the word, because sometimes in the New Testament, the word that's used here has to do with exaltation. Paul uses it in Philippians 2, when he talks about let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, but made himself of no reputation. He goes through that whole thing. And coming to earth and being found in the appearance as a man, he submitted. We talked about this. Jesus gave himself to death. Sin is what kills. Jesus didn't have sin. He didn't have to die. He said that in John 10 several times. I laid down my life. I lay it down. I'm laying it down. There's no reason for me to die. I didn't sin. He lays it down. Gives himself over to death, and that's what Paul says. He submits himself. He's obedient to death. Even death on the cross. The next verse, therefore, God has highly exalted him. It's almost like, again, Paul's having a little play on words, so to speak. Jesus allowed himself to be lifted up to the cross, and therefore God exalted him, lifted him up. Their imagery is all over the place in the New Testament with that kind of thing. But in verses 34 through 36, this ties together kind of like our last thing I want to say, and then we're done. If somebody wants to read verses 34 through 36 in John 10.
The people answered him, we have heard out of the law that Christ abideth forever. And how sayest thou, the Son of Man must be lifted up? Who is this Son of Man? Then Jesus said unto them, yet a little while 'tis the light.
That's okay.
Yet a little while is the light within you. Walk while ye have the light, lest darkness come upon you. For he that walketh in the darkness knoweth not whither he goeth. While ye have light, believeth in the light, that ye may be the children of light. These things spake Jesus, and departed, and did hide himself from them.
And that is the end of the first half of John as far as he's concerned. He's just finished everything he wants to say before he's going to put one little tag and then start the road to the cross, which we're not going to get into today. But he makes that statement, and you can catch what he says. He's right back to where he was in the beginning with Nicodemus about light and dark, and that the light is going to be revealed. John started his gospel by saying, the light has shined in the darkness, but the darkness did not get a hold of it. The dark did not seize it, did not try to possess it, did not try to take it in. In John 3, what the darkness does, because the light exposes deeds of darkness, and can either set you free from those deeds, or you run back into the darkness and hold on to the deeds. It's your call what you want to seize and take hold of. But the light shows you. It shows you in love the light. And this has been going on through John, and now Jesus is finishing the end of the book and saying, listen, you've seen the light. I know you have. And on the cross, Jesus uses the word judgment in that John 12 passage. We've talked about judgment already before when we said that we see God's judgment. But there's also something else he says. He talks about the dark, the prince of this world being cast out while he draws. So there's both. And what he's saying is on the cross, it's never going to be clearer. Its lightness and darkness is never going to be more clear than it is on the cross. When you see what man does, the works of darkness, and you see the light coming out of Jesus and saying, today you will be with me in paradise. Father, forgive them. They really don't know what they're doing. You're going to see light and dark, and you're going to have to make a choice. It's the place of choice. And if you choose light, this is the last thing I want to say about the cross today. Jesus says, if you choose light, if you believe, then you will be sons of light. You see, the only way to become a child of light is to believe. You can know, from John 8, you can know that's God. One can, I should say, not you, but one can know God and still not believe. So, what we're saying here today, what Jesus says is that it goes right back around to John 3 again when he talked about being born from above. That the cross is going to be the epitome of the place. After you've been to Bible college and everything else, the cross is going to be the place where you're going to be faced with light and dark that will either believe or not. And in believing, we become. And we cannot become the children of light without that faith in Jesus Christ and what he did. Cross is a powerful, powerful place that way. The last thing I'll say is this is, oh great, the Bible's saying, I've heard this guy for years say the last thing. No, this is true, because I think this is interesting. The word judgment that is used is the Greek word crisis. It's the Greek word crisis. It's the same Greek word that we get our English word crisis from. And this is what I find fascinating. The original word crisis, the ancient Greek, the word crisis meant the turning point of a disease. So, when somebody had a disease and they could see that he was starting to be healed from it for whatever their method of healing was, when they got to the point where they could actually see the disease turning, that was the crisis point. And Jesus, I said before, remember, he's talking to Greeks, and he's talking about crisis, the turning point of the disease. And he's talking, the reason when he says if, he's using Aristotelian logic. There is not a Greek there that when he says if then, if I drop this thing, boom, it's going to hit the floor. Although I had somebody in England argue with me, well, I used a different example. You got to love this. Do you remember Peter Verba? If he was a physicist, yeah. I used an expression once. I said, if you throw it in the air, it's going to come down. No, not necessarily.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
I said, sure it is. The laws of gravity. No. They're not laws. They're theories.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Gotta love them.
And I said, Peter, you care to elaborate? Yes, actually, if you thrust something upwards with enough force, and it goes into the atmosphere, you can get it to go around the Earth and eventually springboard into outer space, and it'll never come down again. So you can actually throw something up, and it never comes down. So
As a human goes to throw something up, it will.
Right.
I don't even trust myself to get into that argument with Peter.
Right. Brought rings around that one, too.
Anyway, Aristotelian logic. If I drop it, it's going to hit the floor. And that's what Jesus said. I'm going to the cross, boom, I will draw all men. He was using Aristotelian logic that all those Greeks, they would have looked at it and said, if A, then B. That we understand.
Right.
We got that. So you're telling us that when you go to the cross, this is the result? And I believe the Greeks, probably the brothers, are in heaven saying, how profound was that statement? He said, if a grain of wheat goes into the ground and dies, if it doesn't, it's alone. Jesus lives and dies, and I don't take this the wrong way, but that's it. Great guy. But if I go to the cross, that right there, if I go into the ground and die, then I bear much fruit. And here we are, 2,000 years later. The fruit of the cross, the fruit of Jesus laying down his life. Fantastic.
Judgment and crisis. Did you ever finish that?
The word judgment, the Greek word is crisis. And when Jesus talks about now is the judgment of this world, he's saying now the prince of this world is finished. He's done. He's been cast out in the way that he's had too much time in the house. In John 9, do you remember the blind guy when he receives his sight and they're questioning him and everything and they don't like the answers they're getting? You remember what they do with him? They throw him out. Get out of here. You don't belong here. It's the same Greek word again. Jesus is saying he's had too much time, too much authority in this world. He's done. I'm dealing with him. And for mankind, the crisis point is your disease has just ended. I am dealing with sin. I am dealing with death. I'm dealing with all of it. It's the turning point. It's the crisis. Enjoy. Enjoy. What do I have to do? Just believe me. I wouldn't lie to you. Why would I lie to you? Is it worth going to the cross to prove a lie? Seriously? I'm not joking and I'm not lying. Please, for your benefit, for your sake, it's for your sake, it's for your purpose to be accomplished, believe me. Just don't think it's a lot to ask, do you? Anyway, don't edit the good stuff out.